Hello and welcome to yet another fantastic, I believe, fantastic interview with a very special guest tonight, Zuzana Štrbáková. Hello, Zuzi, and welcome to our Club for Successful ELT Entrepreneurs.
Hi, Nina. Hello, everyone watching.
It's a very special guest tonight because we have a very nice story how we met. Once again, I am bringing someone who I met on LinkedIn, and I will promote LinkedIn networking with this interview again. Um, Less than a year ago, we met face to face for the first time. I came to Bratislava to Christmas markets, and we decided to become online colleagues. Offline colleagues and friends as well, not just online. But we first met more than a year ago on LinkedIn through talking about Dog May, I believe, wasn't it?
I think what happened, Nina, was that you just really stalked me, and I let you. I think that's what happened. And then we met at the Christmas market, and then we have never said goodbye ever since.
What's that story about? Can you clarify?
I would say it's about connection. Really, it's about connection, and I think it's about fun. And it's about all the sweets we had at that cafe.
So I wasn't an your online stalker, was I?
A welcome one.
All right.
No, just kidding.
So
It was just as
Susie,
you said.
several of the ladies from the club know you, but not everyone knows you. So could you please introduce yourself and give us a bit of your background, including how you learned your beautiful English?
Okay. Um, well, I've been teaching for over 26 years. That's quite scary. I started when I was 18, while I was still at uni, and at that time, there were not so many of us with very fluent English, and the market was just booming at that time. So I think I was very lucky to be hired, and I started teaching for companies right away at a very, very young age, where all the rookie mistakes were still tolerated.
Hmm.
And so I was, by the time I finished uni, I was teaching full time,
Wow.
and I had my own clients. It was really hard at that time, but I had the time and I had the energy. And then, so when I graduated, I studied English and psychology at the pedagogical faculty at Comenius University. And when I graduated, I switched to freelancing right away. And I was just teaching a million hours a week, morning till evening, 5 days a week, sometimes weekends. And 2 years later, I almost burnt out. Really, I got really sick all the time, and I was really not well physically. So I needed a change. I decided needed to do something, but I wanted a productive change. So I went to do my CELTA to Brighton for a summer. It was a monthly this intensive course. And so I went there and I just wanted to relax, but also, learn something new. And it was a really, really great experience. And the CELTA classes are observed. So I had a lot of teaching practice there. And after the course finished, the school principal offered me a job and asked whether I would like to come back in September and teach for them full time, which I declined because I felt, no, I have everything at home, I'm fine. And then I came home and I opened my diary and I got a panic attack. And I realized that I can't go back to this anymore. I can't go to teaching 12 hours a day anymore. It's just not happening. So I called back and I accepted the job. And within 3 weeks, I was back and I stayed there for 2 years,
Wow.
teaching at that school.
Mhm.
Um, and then after 2 years, I came back and I started my own business, which was by then a lot better defined idea. It was all about corporate language training and skills based courses. and I set it up with a friend and with my colleague from Brighton, who is now my husband. And, so my story, is all it's about everything. And so we ran the company together, uh, as I was a partner and a manager. I was responsible for product creation and for content, basically. Um, we ran it for 16 years. And then 16 years later, we had two children. And then it got really hard to be together and to run a business together and to even have management meetings together. And I came to a point in my career when I felt like I wanted to go back to the basics and teach to the more academic stuff. And I was kind of fed up with running a business.
So you
Um,
weren't teaching then, yeah?
I was teaching a little bit,
A little bit.
but not full time. And it was all, as it is when you run a business, you kind of teach the either something really, really specific or something really important for the business. And you always have this big picture view
Yeah.
of work always. And I felt like I wanted to go, focus on teaching and more academic stuff. So at the peak of the COVID craziness, I decided to leave the company and go back to freelancing. But it's worked out really well, and I've been doing that since then.
So now you're back to freelancing. Do you feel any kind of burnout this time around?
Yeah, well, I'd be lying if I said that that's not the case. At times, it's a struggle,
Mhm.
and that is a real kind of threat that I am constantly aware of.
And what's the biggest struggle?
Well, I think and everyone watching will know it's this constant struggle between making ends meet and managing it, financially and balancing out the high seasons and with the low seasons, with your own commitments, and all the unexpected things and the cancellations and the late cancels and everything, and just the whole
Mhm.
continuity of the freelancing world, which is always very volatile. So yeah, and so when there's this constant stress, when there is work, you need to do it because you
Uh-huh.
never know when there will not be work again. So
Mhm.
it's like this, and I'm very aware of it now.
Are you doing anything differently from all those years back when you were a freelancer after graduating?
Well, everything, because the whole world has changed so much.
Mhm.
The first thing is that I don't do face-to-face classes anymore, and I switch between formats. So face-to-face lessons, I only do online, and I try to do different formats like workshops or more intensive things, um, face-to-face if I can.
So
But
individual lessons you do online and group stuff
And
offline.
also, no, also group lessons I do online.
Oh, you do group lessons online. Okay. All
Mhm.
right. What would you say has changed in ELT lately?
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say the whole context of using English is just different.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, it I was the bearer of the language. I was the one who was introducing the people to the language, to the culture, and I was prescribing the content.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is no longer the case. That hasn't been the case for many years now. So that's the biggest thing, I think. Then the model of the native speaker as the learning aspiration, that has changed a lot. So we need to speak about, with business English as a lingua franca, we need to speak about functionality and roles and does it work? Is it good? how do you want it to be, and it's so much more learner focused than it was before. I have
Mhm.
always thought it was learner focused, but now it's really, it just goes much deeper.
Okay, so we will talk about it in more detail in a little bit. But I would first like to touch upon the things that connected us first,
Mhm.
and that's language coaching and emergent language and Dogme ELT. We are both big fans of these methodologies, if we can call them methodologies, approaches to language teaching. So, what made you switch from teaching to coaching?
Mm. I must say I'm not actually coaching purely.
Hmm.
I'm just getting my qualification, so I'm in training right now with Ilka. I'm
Hmm.
enjoying it immensely.
Hmm.
But I have realized that I have been using the coaching approach. I think that's safe to say for many years, like a lot of us.
Hmm.
Um, and it's because I think working with individuals and trying to provide tailor-made service, you cannot avoid it. You have to take yourself away from the process as much as possible, because that's only then can you actually really hear the people and the clients what they need. And also I realized many years ago actually that prescribing the content really doesn't work.
Hmm.
It really doesn't, because it's not relevant, it's not sustainable. It doesn't matter what I plan, the client will always, something will always happen, something will get more priority. Um, and 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 it just didn't make sense anymore. um,
So you don't prepare anything anymore, is that so?
no, I do. My whole, it's not that I don't use materials, I do,
Hmm.
um, but not as much as I did, and definitely not page to page. I create a lot of tailor-made materials, and also I just cherry pick depending on what we're doing. With some people, I don't use materials at all, but what all my courses have in common is very thorough needs analysis. So
Hmm.
I need to know what the assignment is, and that's, I think, is the great, probably the most crucial thing in teaching businesses, because you need to know what the assignment is. What the assignment is, you need to know what your budget is and what your timeline is, and all the content basically then just has to fit into that. And you need to be ready to make, to switch if something changes.
So
So.
how can I imagine a typical cooperation with a client in your company courses?
Mhm.
Is it packaged or is it a never-ending course?
Mhm.
When do you start? When do you finish? How do you go about it?
That really depends, and I think this will be my answer to most of your questions. But it depends on who the client is. Is it a company, or is it an individual within a company? Because if it's a company, then they are the decision makers, and they have the budget. And then I have two clients basically. I have the organizer of the education, the customer, and then I have the student who will be there. So that's different. And for such frameworks, it's a much more big picture kind of work. So for that kind of training, I usually prefer module courses, not
Mhm.
ongoing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Kind of like limited, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And if they want to extend it and they have another 12 weeks, then that's fine, but we call it another module, because I like things to be wrapped up, so that I find that it's much more manageable if you know where you're going, how much time you have, and also the attendance is much better. Just
Yes.
psychologically, if they know that they have 12 weeks, then there are fewer late cancels. It's just much more concise, and just it just makes more sense.
I
And
agree and I confirm.
yeah,
Yeah. How this is not very typical in the company courses environment. How did you manage to yeah, convince the HR that this is a good way to go?
It's not always easy, and sometimes it is. Sometimes they are surprised because obviously, from the business point of view, it makes more sense to get as many lessons as possible. But that has never been my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Before, while I was freelancing back then, while I was managing my own company, and even now, because if there's no greater pain than trying to teach somebody or train somebody who doesn't want to be there, this is just,
Yeah.
it's everybody's waste of time. And
Yeah.
I would rather give up a part of budget, but I would rather make it more meaningful. And it makes more sense because then you can charge a little more. So we have always been considered really expensive on our market. I don't think we are, but we have been told we are. But simply because we just don't run these endless courses. And as a freelancer, I don't do that either.
Good.
I run ongoing courses then with private individuals. Then that's
You just mentioned prices. Shall we talk about money in ELT
mm,
and what you think about the situation in ELT these
mm,
days and how well are um, professionals like the two of us paid?
mm. Well, I did tell you before this interview that I really hope that we don't victimize, this whole industry. But I think we need to talk about it. The interesting thing is that when you speak to teachers in the state sector, and this I'm talking about Slovakia now. Okay, maybe that's a different story in other countries. I know your audience could be international, so I'm just talking about my country now. Then what I do is luxury in terms of the amount of work and the money I get paid. But I am not in state education. I am part of the corporate training industry, and in that industry, language training is still
Underpaid.
really underpaid.
Yeah.
And I think it's partly, and it's kind of a little undervalued as well. And I
Yeah.
understand that it's English, okay, and there's this competition, and I know that this is not Icelandic or some really rare language where the competition is really low, but still, they will pay a business coach three times the amount of money that they will pay you, with the same expectations. Or it's just, I've always had this problem. Like, if we call it language teaching, it's
Hmm.
going to be cheaper. If
Yeah.
we call it training, then if we call it something else. So the whole industry, I find, is really distorted in this, in who we want to be and how we want to be seen and how we want to be evaluated.
Yes, yes, yes. And it was one of my motivations why I went into mentoring
Mm,
for ELT freelancers because we are so underpaid and so undervalued, and then we undervalue ourselves. We don't see the value in our services as we should because I believe we change people's lives. We
mm,
really do. And in the business environment, you can see it clearly, maybe even the same day, right? When you help somebody with, I don't know if you do that. Do you help people with writing emails and translating contracts? Let me remember my company courses. Yeah, just people bringing in something
mm,
spontaneously and immediately jumping on it and helping them with
mm.
something they've been dealing it. Is
Yeah,
that
just
what
like
your courses
pulling.
look
Yes,
like?
yes, of course. This is why I'm so careful with assignments, because naturally clients will come like, Yeah, we were supposed to be doing some financial business or legal or whatever, or just general English sometimes. But I have this contract. Can you just proofread it for me?
Mhm.
And when I was younger, I was thinking, of course I will. I will translate your marketing materials. I will proofread your contracts. I will do anything for you, and then, because you just want to help. But then you realize that, hang on, that am I even qualified to do this? Is that what needs to be done? Is that how it's going to be approached? So just a second, I'm sorry.
No problem. Absolutely.
We're alone, but we're not. Um,
That's okay. One of your colleagues, yeah, a fellow teacher.
that was the cleaning lady.
Sorry,
It, yeah, that was the cleaning lady.
a
That's
cleaning lady.
time of the day. Yes, I shouldn't be here at this time. So,
Are you normally at home with your children at this time?
well, yeah.
You don't teach in the evenings, yeah?
No, not really. I have long days and I have short days.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is not usually the time that I normally teach.
Good.
So sorry about that. So yeah,
Anyway, yeah, the roles that we play in yeah, business English courses, all of them,
mm, well,
all of them.
that's what happens. Doesn't it happen to you that they bring in stuff and then you have to switch and you have to be I
Yeah.
with age I have become so much more aware of these different roles, and I'm very very mindful of even if I I have no problem switching them, but I'm very mindful of it, and I am really careful to let the client know that this is something else, that we can do it, but this is mentoring, or this is consultancy, or this is not teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And translation, I always tell people, look, I can do it for you, but I'm not a translator. But yeah, you can speak English, it's fine. And then I always say, but translators study translating for 5 years at uni. And, it cannot be just dismissed, these 5 years that they spend at uni doing that. So,
Yeah, yeah, just like you studied to become a teacher.
mm,
So do they want you to do it in class, or do they expect you to do it before the next lesson, or how does it work?
yeah, um, they do it less if I tell them what's what. And when I was still running my business, this was a big deal in our teacher training. Um, and we were always trying to tell people, the teachers, to be careful not to do anything that is asked of them,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not simply professional. They're not getting paid for it. And also, some of the stuff, people are people, they want to get things done, but sometimes it's really huge responsibility. And I have always been joking, if I had any wit, I would probably just um, do industrial spying, and just I would be selling materials between companies that my clients show me, because I have seen projections, I have seen marketing strategies, I have seen all kinds of stuff, product development and that sort of stuff, and people just give it to you. And when you run a business and you have other teachers there, you really need to cover that as well. And you need to tell them that this is, don't go there,
So
don't be.
what do you tell them what the response should be when a client wants something that they are not paid for? How do you train the teachers
Mm.
to respond to
Well,
that?
first, I think the teachers need to be aware of what's what. And that sounds, and I really don't mean like they don't know what's what, but I think sometimes everything is under the cover of English. And I think you really need to realize what you're doing.
Yeah.
What is teaching? What is mentoring? What is coaching? And what the responsibility is in each of these activities. Translation and interpreting is something completely different. And so the first thing I think for everyone is to realize and be quite clear about these roles and what these jobs, because they are different jobs,
They
what they
are.
what they, you know, are in what they entice, what they include,
Yeah.
and then you are so much so much clearer on your price list.
Yes, that helps as well, for sure.
But, so not everything is a teaching lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need to clarify it with the clients. But what I'm saying now is the ideal, and it doesn't always happen that way because in companies, the student who asks you to do stuff is not the one who pays the invoice.
Exactly. I was just gonna say because I don't teach in companies anymore. So but I do teach CEOs and top managers, and sometimes they ask me to do things that I'm not really happy with and we didn't agree on. Then we negotiate. Sometimes I say, okay, but this is separate. And
Mhm.
they understand very quickly that I am asking to be paid separately for that in a polite way. And sometimes I say, I am sorry, but this was not agreed, and I am not going to do it as part of the lesson. And I don't wish to do it outside of the lesson either. So you need to. I will help you to find a solution, but I'm not going to be the one translating.
And how is it for you to say to say no to your clients? Is it easy?
Um, it gets easy with time, but it's never pleasant.
Mhm.
It's never pleasant to bring up some kind of conflict. It is basically a certain conflict that you have suddenly because they are expecting you to do it. It's like obvious, right? You like you said, well, you speak English, right? So what's the problem? So it depends what they are asking and who it is, of course. Much easier to do it with women, I will be
Mhm.
completely
Mhm.
honest. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. So there's that as well. But that's also quite tricky because from the business point of view, the clients are used to this. They do it every single day. Somehow,
Yeah.
with us or between us, that's not the case. Like somehow you're supposed to do everything for them. And I have realized over the many years that I've been doing this that whenever I say yes to something that is to an inappropriate request, that's only me showing my lack of business expertise.
Yeah.
It's just that. It's not me being rude or anything, but it is expected of me to say no and set my boundaries. And
Yes.
when I don't do that, I have only myself to blame. So it's I am bringing my own price down by doing that, by always being available, always saying yes to everything. Um, and there is this, speaking about hats in general, there is always this conflict between the teacher and the business person, the entrepreneur. And sometimes they are in direct clash because as a teacher, as an educator, you just want to support.
Yeah.
And as a business person, you can't
Yeah.
because it's not viable.
And especially as a language teacher, we are a special breed, I would say.
Mhm.
We are so supportive, so motivating, and always there for our clients when we talk about the private
Mhm.
sector and working with adults, right? So I think it's really hard for us to be business people at the same time. So all of you ladies here listening and everybody else who is in ELT as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer, independent, their own boss, hats off because it is really challenging because because we want to help and the money is like the okay, we don't want to talk about the money. I don't want to talk about the money. Yeah, pay me well, but I don't want to negotiate. It should like not even be on in contract. Like I don't even want to like say it, right? Why do you think that is?
It's as you said, it's that it's just we just have a different setup.
Yeah.
We are a different breed. Somehow we are the ones who who support and help, and that's not always a commercial. That's almost never a commercial activity. So, speaking of negotiations, this is the one thing that I absolutely hate um, about working with businesses, and I must say, I am just rubbish at it, really rubbish.
So how
Um,
do you do it? How does a language teacher become a business person? Tell us.
well, my business, freelance and before as a company, has always been really based on relationships. So
Yeah.
mm, the strategy has always been to keep it small and niche, kind of by the content. So we did not start a language school. That was the back in 2006 when we were starting the company. The idea was not to start a large language school because I felt like there were enough of those. And I really, having had the experience of corporate freelancing and teaching for a language school in
Mhm.
England, a
Mhm.
public language school, I felt like I kind of knew my way around both. And I was quite clear about how I imagined corporate language training should be. And my conviction has always been that it shouldn't be an internal language school, just a language school in a company. That it just
Yeah.
shouldn't be that. That all the processes are different. Everything is different. The stakeholders. It's actually you train, you design a training program for a company in the exactly the opposite way. So I don't give demo lessons like language schools do, simply because I don't know what to do in that demo lesson.
Yeah.
Uh, it's
Yeah.
not an intermediate general English course and come and join us and see how it is.
Yeah.
I don't do it. So that's something off the offer right away. I can't, in the negotiation, I can't tell the client, look, I will give you 3 free demo lessons or a demo lesson for all your, employees, no risk. You can come and have a look. I don't do that. We have never done that.
So it's word of mouth. They need to hear about you, or
Yeah,
how do they get to
and,
you?
and I think that the core um, decision making, I think, for the client is when we start talking about their language training. When we actually present the idea, like, look, what we can do and what we would like to do is do a very, very thorough language audit at your company. And I still do it as a freelancer. I did it as a company, where and that language audit is a solid product on its own,
Yeah.
which has its structure, its process. And in the negotiation, I always say, look, we will do the language audit for you. We will give you a full report with all the data that you request. If you, here comes the sales pitch. If you decide to continue with us, that language audit will be at a discount or free or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
depending on the package. Um, and I do the same with individual clients as a freelancer. I never agree on anything before I have heard what they want. And
Mhm.
this is, I realize that this is actually the first step of coaching. That's the chemistry call. But I go further than that, obviously, because I actually do the job of the language assessment.
Mhm. Mhm.
With
How do you
in
under?
companies,
Sorry, go ahead.
in companies, language assessment cannot only be a placement test. That's another difference. It has to be much, much more elaborate than that.
What else should be there? Goals?
Yes, of course.
Mhm.
Expectations,
Mhm.
and it should be like a 360 process
Mhm.
because you have different stakeholders. It's not just you and the students, but
Yeah,
it's
who are usually, let's go over this. This is a very interesting topic because just like when some of us teach children, but the stakeholder is the parent, not the
yeah,
child, right? What is
exactly.
it like in a company setting?
Just like that, but the child is independent. So yes, there are the employees. Then there is the HR department,
Yeah.
usually a training specialist who will manage it all.
Hmm.
Sometimes they are decision makers as to budgets, but mm, mostly and recently that has changed a lot. The role of the HR has changed enormously over the years. Now it's very rare that they would be deciding on budget allocations. Now they are mostly just managing the whole process and arranging everything. Um, Sometimes in larger companies, above the HR specialist, there will be an HR manager who actually decides on the training strategy. This is the person, the ideal person to speak to, because they are between you and the money people,
Yeah.
and they want what's best for both the business and the people. They want to make it work. When you get to speak to those people, you have won,
Yeah.
because you usually find a common ground with these people, and if they do not usually, they are not to be bamboozled, they are not to be, fooled with any craziness. They know what's what. They are usually professional educators themselves. They know how to work with people, they know what it takes to work with people, and they also know what the limits of the business are and what the
Hmm.
expectations are. So they usually respond really well to this thorough needs analysis and focused training, because they do it all the time with all the other training that they arrange for their company.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they are used to it,
Yeah.
and this is very important to bear in mind when you deal with companies, that they also deal with all different other different kinds of educators,
Yeah.
language coaches, soft skills trainers, hard skills trainers, technical trainers, all kinds of things, work safety and that kind of stuff. So they know, they have seen other people, they know what the prices are, they know what everybody does, and it's in a way it's bad because they have a really good overview of the market and they know the benchmark, but on the other hand they can recognize if you can provide something extra.
Hmm.
So there's the HR manager, and but also not every company has a specific, like a big HR manager, only the large ones. Smaller companies usually have somebody to cover this, and the language training is actually ordered by the CEO or the in one case the financial manager, because they have the budget. So you get to negotiate with a lot of very, very different people. But recently, the trend has been towards decentralization.
Hmm.
So even in very large companies, you don't actually get to see these decision makers, because every manager, every department manager has a kind of
Hmm.
training budget that they can allocate and they choose. So from the business point of view, this is really interesting. But also, you can see that this is the same trend that's happening in education, that it's all going down to the user. And it
Hmm.
has to be, it's not decided from above.
Hmm.
It goes down to the people. So, my clients recently, my company clients, have been individual employees who got some kind of, who knew me or who have heard of me or something, and they ask for a price offer, and I send it to them, and then they run it by their manager, who is not an HR person or
Yeah.
anything, and they just say, "Okay, guys, you just have this much money. Is this what you want to get for that money? Yes, okay, then you can hire this person," and then the HR just processes the vendor contracts and all that,
Yeah,
and
I was just hired exactly this
yeah,
way.
so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a client who works for a big corporation, and I just realized that you are describing what the process that she's been through to get her her money for the lessons. Yeah. Okay, that's
Mm.
interesting. And yeah, the alignment with what is happening in education, more autonomy. Hey, more autonomy
Totally.
to
I'm
the
a huge fan
individual.
of that. I'm a really big fan of that because it really works. And that kind of cuts down the stakeholders, the number of
Yeah.
stakeholders in the process, but it also um, places more responsibility on the students. I hate calling my clients students somehow because that
Yeah, I know.
doesn't go with the role of the
I
you
know.
know. But I don't know what else to call the clients. So I have a, like, just to give you an example, I am teaching the whole of the corporate legal department in one of the banks here.
Hmm.
And they are divided in two groups. One is doing a hardcore legal English. The other one is just doing general English. And I had a problem because they have one budget, and it should be evenly distributed. So I was thinking, how am I going to do this? Because that the contract drafting course should be nowhere near the general English course. It should be, I don't know, yeah.
More
So
expertise, let's say. More expertise. Yeah.
and also prep and everything is just
Yeah.
so much harder.
Yeah.
Um, so what I did in that particular case, I just set both the prices a little bit higher than I would normally, and I'm kind of telling myself that it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then that's so it all go it all comes down to who you teach, what you are supposed to do, and it changes all the time.
So let's talk a little bit more in more detail about this autonomy in education. I would say resurfacing. I think we had it before. We just lost it many centuries ago. So that's why I say resurfacing and showing up in the business context as well. Um, can you talk a little bit more about that? What you see changing? Because we've had so many interesting conversations about this topic, and I know it's your big passion.
Yeah, you mean how the learner autonomy has changed?
Yes, yeah, but in the business context, yeah, the client's context,
Mhm.
because that is so important.
I think it has the corporate clients, corporate learners in the corporate context have always been more autonomous
Yeah,
than other people, and that is sounds like a bold overgeneralization. But what I mean is that in their work, if they are learning English for work, it is so much more targeted. They know exactly what they want to get out of it. It's not a
task-based, very goal-oriented.
very
Yeah,
well oriented and task based,
yeah,
and the intensity or the urgency of it changes with the depending on what's going on at work.
yeah,
So
yeah,
sometimes you have these easier periods where it's okay to talk, and then they are preparing for a presentation or something, and it's just like push, 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 and all of a
yeah,
sudden you have more lessons and you go,
yeah,
and then it's easier, and then it's something crazy where they go for a conference or something. Then you don't see them for 2 months or 2 weeks, or depending on where they are, and they come back from their business travels and they have a completely new view of their own, English. And my God, I went to this for this business trip to Africa, and I realized that I can't speak English at all. We need to do something. So the motivational level really, really fluctuates
yeah.
depending on what's going on. Um, Also, another thing that I have found is that business people tend to be more skilled in metacognition.
Hmm.
Because they apply it in all their other tasks.
Because
Whether
they do it in other areas. Maybe they had other soft skills program going on. Yeah,
exactly, and they know, and they have been trained.
yeah,
I've had so many people tell me, oh, if I ever hear anything about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I will, jump out of the window. They have been
I
trained so
hear
many
the
times.
same. I hear the same about setting smart goals.
Yeah, it's like, don't give me smart. That's just,
Yeah,
I know,
don't give me
don't give
smart
me,
girl. So I don't. When they ask, I
and
don't.
don't give me SWOT, and don't give me
Yeah,
this. It's just, but they cannot work without it. Even if
exactly.
you
So I do have to get it out of them. You have to elicit it, and you
you just
do.
don't
Like
call it, and you
in
just
a
don't always
conversation.
provide the
Yeah.
brief and everything, but it has to be because they are not happy. They know that they're not doing it right. So this is something that you can really fall back on, and you can rely. It's actually something that I kind of check within that initial assessment.
Hmm.
So when I do an initial interview, I also go for learner skills and all these things. I ask them,
Hmm.
how do you what's your preference? How do you like to study? How do you like to learn? How do
Yeah.
you plan your lessons? How do you blah blah blah. So and you get a lot of information just by asking these questions, and you can get a pretty decent picture of what to expect once you start the course.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how they tend to be more autonomous. And another really big difference between people using English at work and for work and all the rest of the English learners is that they get to see um, the effect of their language competence in real life with real consequences.
Yeah.
And this is rough.
Yeah.
They don't have often they don't have that safe space to sort of test it and try it and take the risks. They need to go out there, do what they can with their English, and come back and lick their wounds if needed. It's like it's very, very brave. But this risk taking, I consider to be one of the key elements of a successful learner. And I always tell that to my clients, like, look, how much of a risk taker are you in language? Because if you are a risk taker, you'll be fine, I guarantee. One way or another, with me or with Duolingo, if you are a risk taker, you will manage. If you're not, it will be harder and you will need more
Because they have to go in and speak with
help.
mistakes in very important conversations that involve a lot of money sometimes, or
Actually,
yeah, yeah,
and
definitely.
recently, what I have noticed, and that's a global change of English as a lingua franca, that the native speaker is not there as the only model to aspire to.
Yeah,
Um, and many times, they don't even speak to native speakers
yeah,
at all. So their perceptions of what's important change depending on the context that they
working.
where they are that they work in, and that can affect their motivation. That can affect their willingness to um, take it seriously, even. And then sometimes they come to a point where whatever they have been doing just stops working. With one experience at a business meeting or something, where they all of a sudden they realize that, okay, whatever I've been doing is not enough, and there's this leap, and this is my time. This is when finally they open up and they are ready for serious training, and this is where language coaching is really, really useful.
I wanted to ask about language coaching
Yeah.
right now as you are speaking about it, because this is the perfect tool to
Mhm.
help a person uh, turn it around and see it as a lesson rather than a failure, right?
Totally. And because the change comes with the client, it just waits for them. It just kind of like, if they have said, yeah, I don't like studying in a structured way, let's just talk, let's just blah, 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 let's keep it easy. Um, and then something happens in their life or at their work, and they realize, like, okay, now I simply cannot be who I am in Slovak. I can't, and it's driving me crazy. I cannot be as charming, I cannot be as funny or as quick. I get the job done, but I am not myself, and I hate it. They don't say it like this, but through coaching, this is what I hear. Um, or through coaching questions, at least. You just
Yeah.
ask enough questions, and and you are entering the realm of identity, even. And that's what
Yeah.
I used to do before. That was never even, it was so much more on the surface, you know? But now the approach is so much more holistic.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes to me with this, I have so much respect for that. And I do not even dare telling them what to do.
Yeah.
It's completely inappropriate and very risky that you will get it wrong,
Yeah.
no matter your experience or goodwill or
Yeah.
expertise or whatever. You
So just
need to ask
keep
them.
asking questions. Keep asking questions.
And also, they usually have their answers.
Yeah.
That, you know,
Love. Don't you just love language coaching?
I'm just learning to go through the whole process in the formal way.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my key like learning points for myself is just shut up when just when they come to a conclusion or come up with a point. You just don't go like, don't, because it's there. You know, you've been waiting for this, and they give it to you, and it's just so exciting. But you shouldn't tell them, because it's not your place to validate, and it's not your place to
Yeah.
provide.
You just have to go, mm-hmm.
Yes, so what I'm hearing is a
Yeah.
great breakthrough. Can we talk a bit more about this? And inside, you're just screaming like, "Thank you! Now that you have come to this point, you will be successful." It's very, very exciting.
I cannot hold myself very often. I just scream.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk more about what's challenging for you because you seem to be so professional and to know it all, but I'm sure that there are challenges when it comes to this new approach, this coaching approach, this more autonomy for the learner. We can call them learners, no?
I think that's a nice word. And funnily enough, we don't have a word like that in Slovak, which is very, very interesting. We don't have a word that would mean this. Just
To je
somebody.
pravda, to není ani v češtině, podle mě. Nebo jestli jo, holky, řekněte.
Nemáme. And it's a
Nemám.
nice way, because it's always a student, žiak, student, pupil, something, but it kind of defines the role. There's this kind of,
Exactly.
it's
Because
not
studying and learning are two completely different activities. Yeah.
exactly. So, okay, well, let's be vulnerable.
Yes.
I I may come across as a know-it-all. I hope not. But I am actually really, and we have spoken about this quite a lot, that I am recently, I don't know if it's the age or whether I have, with the changes in my life, I have been struggling with a massive imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
like massively. I have come to the point where I actually didn't know what I was doing anymore. My clients would probably be really surprised, but I have 2-3 years ago is actually when I left my company and I went back to freelancing. It also came with this huge change of purpose,
Mhm.
and also this realization that when you're a company, you have access to different circles.
Yeah.
So, and also certain, and I don't, so certain don't mean anything like any social status or anything.
Yeah.
What I mean is like
Right.
certain jobs you just don't get if you're an individual provider. You just don't. Um, and you don't get to deal with certain people as a freelancer, because they only speak with companies.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And another thing is like, English is everywhere. There's the competition is huge. There are all these technologies, and everybody kind of knows English anyway. So, and that is a threatening feeling, like what kind of value am I actually providing anymore?
Mhm.
Um, and I decided to, and this was in the middle of COVID when I
Mhm.
realized that I had these issues. So I decided to learn just myself. I just started studying a lot. after so many years of just producing, I realized that I felt like I really needed to learn. So I started, and this was the perfect time, all the lockdowns and all the everything. Suddenly, all these amazing professionals went online, and all of a sudden, you could have a course with Stephen Krashen, and you
Scott
didn't
Thornbury.
and Thornbury, and you got to meet them. And John Hughes, I had a fantastic course on material writing with
Uh-huh.
John Hughes. It was fantastic, and I met so many amazing educators, um, and I got to speak to them. I got to ask them questions, and most importantly, I got to see how
Yeah,
they do their magic.
yeah.
And watching Scott in action as a teacher is an experience in its own right. It's just like it is really amazing to
So,
watch him
for
how
those who don't know who we are talking about, who is Scott Thornbury and Dogme ELT, could you speak about it shortly from your own experience? Because that's how we met. I remember your post on LinkedIn that I reacted to, I commented on, and it was your reflection after you finished the Dogme course. I was like, wow, she did Dogme with Scott. So I want to know her. I want to know more.
Scott Thornbury, as you know, is a is an esteemed language educator, who is based in, I think, Spain. He is, I think, in Barcelona, if I'm not
Barcelona.
mistaken. And he 20 years ago um, was he reflected on the issues that we have been describing, how prescribing content doesn't kind of work, how even communicative language teaching can actually kill true communication. Scott always uses this example how somebody, like a student, like we talk to students before everybody gets together, and then we say, right, lesson plan, and then we create all these communicative activities. And he uses this famous example of a student called Jorge who comes to class, and how was your weekend, Jorge? Oh, it was my wedding. And oh, really, really, congratulations. And now, okay, page 15.
Yeah.
And there's a communicative activity on page 15, but there was this amazing opportunity to connect with people and for authenticity and just true connection, and that we kind of kill. And Scott reflected on that, and he wrote this article based on the Swedish or the Scandinavian film, um, school, was it, or approach to
Yeah.
filmmaking.
Lars von Trier, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
last one, the Dogme approach to filmmaking. No props, just
Props.
use whatever you have,
Yeah.
and only that. So, but so I did two courses with Scott actually. The first one I did was 2 years ago, with which was much more academic. It was on the alternative approaches to language learning, which was about different learning theories. All the theories that he spoke about were all based on the student identity, on social behavior, social connections,
Nice.
cultural interactions, and all about that human side of language learning. And it's just the ideas just resonated with me so much. And then the next year, I joined his Dogme course, where all of this was discussed practically, what to do with it in the classroom and how to go about it.
And you are now using it in your courses, or partly,
Mm,
or
I think
how did you start implementing emergent language?
all the time. I think
Yeah.
it's like with language coaching, in a way that I think a lot of us realize that we have been doing it all the like intuitive. It is just so intuitive, um, that you just work with whatever the students give you,
Yeah.
and you make it work for them, because sometimes that's all you can do, because you don't have That's another thing, in what kind of environment we teach, what kind of circumstances. Sometimes they are not ideal. We're not even in the classroom very often. Um, so I think that's maybe part of what Scott's motivation was for actually talking about this, that we are not all working at schools and in ideal conditions, and we have to make do somehow. Um, so I use it all the time. I work with emergent language in a targeted way. I always have a way of recording the language somehow, and then I use my teaching experience um, to recognize what's important
Hmm.
and what can be dumped. And I think with experience comes this ability to recognize the language patterns that
Yeah,
are relevant, and that for the client or for the conversation that we have been having, or for their learning need. If you have them, you have the client under your skin, and you kind of know what they need. So I think with experience you are able to pick up on what's relevant in that emergent language, and that work with that. And Scott always says that if you're really, really clever and very experienced, you can actually build a solid syllabus out of that.
totally.
Like totally, you can, because you know what kind of things should be covered at this level, and you work with whatever the client gives you, and you kind of build it up.
I go even one step further, and I've been inspired by the clients themselves. They actually come up with it. They, after working with me for some time, they see that I'm all about autonomy and they take charge every lesson more and more, and they start asking for things.
Hmm.
And this is the best thing that can happen to a dogmate teacher, I think. And I love inspiring them to ask me for something that they want, and they have started like like, I think this is what I need. Can I give you a few points that I would like to work on? And then when you build on that, when you scale up, it's magic. I love it. When people ask you how you can be doing it for 26 years or me for 19, this is it. Like
Yeah,
the excitement of the change, right?
it's never the same. You
Yeah.
have done it all, but you haven't. It happens all the time at the same time.
Yeah.
I've heard all the questions, all the examples and everything, but something's always different. And let me ask you this: have you ever been surprised by a request that a client wanted? Have you ever been taken aback, like
Oh,
Nina?
I'm sure, but I cannot think of a specific situation on the spot. I'm not very good at thinking on the spot, but for sure I have. Yeah, for sure. For like,
Have you ever told them, like, look, what you want is the third conditional, and you're nowhere near? Have you ever been in that situation?
for sure, many times, but I also believe in this not really, the level thing, the European framework, the common European framework. I like to teach whatever they ask. When they feel that they are ready for it, they are ready for it. And then I show them and we look at it, and maybe they decide that, oh my God, it's too much. Or, okay, I will try to understand it slowly or just passively. But I believe that my role there is to give them the information they are asking about, but also tell them the context. Yeah, so I can tell them with your level, it's okay if you just understand it passively. You don't need to
Activated yet?
wreck your
Yeah,
brain,
yeah,
you know. But of course we can look at it like some people at A2 want to look at all the tenses
mhm,
because they want to have the big picture. Why not? When they ask for it, I give it to them.
exactly. Yes, I totally agree. And as for the European framework, it's the framework of reference.
Yeah.
I am personally a really big fan of it because there's extensive research behind it, and it's very, very informative and focused on can-do statements. So, which I always tell my clients, if you really want to know your level, it's not about a label, it's about the descriptors, and the
Yeah.
descriptors are amazing. But this is another thing which you have mentioned, that the levels are a bit really a bit fluid. That's also a result of how we use English. Nobody who watches Netflix can be truly A1. It just doesn't. It just doesn't happen. Or somebody, when somebody can say, "I'm a total complete beginner."
Yeah.
No way. No, no, nobody. I saw complete beginners in England, and they were refugees from Africa,
Yeah.
or,
That's
or
exactly.
from Arabic countries, and they had a difficulty even writing Latin script. Nobody in Slovakia is a
Same.
complete
Yeah.
beginner. And I always joke with my clients, when you tell me I'm a complete beginner, this has zero information value for me. You could be anything from A1 to B1 easily.
Exactly.
And it's always like, oh, that in itself, it's quite empowering, just acknowledging that there's so much more than that
Yeah.
you know.
And then you have a conversation with them and like, how are you a beginner? You're speaking English with me. Maybe
Yes,
broken English, but you are speaking English.
and then they start making excuses. Yes, but I understand you because your English is very good, and you understand me because you are Slovak and all that. And that's also some coaching time, kind of. What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, are we really talking about your level?
Yeah.
So
Or is
you
there
can
something
avoid.
deeper inside? Yeah. 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 Yeah, nice. Mm-hmm. I could talk to you forever about this, but I think we'll wrap it up because you can always come and talk to us again about this in more detail. And also, I hope to see you at the Language Teachers Festival again because it was such pleasant experience to have you there with us.
Oh, it's for me too, Nina, and you can count on me. The only excuse will be some illnesses or something, which is always a.
Of your kids, yeah.
The last time I was at my first and the late last time I was at your festival, I told you I was totally amazed by your work and by the community you have built around yourself. Um, and this is something that I really, really value because I don't have it, and you
Well,
have
now you
done
do. Now you do, my friend. You have us, and we are very close, just 1 hour away. So I hope you're coming for
I'll
some
be very
Christmas
happy
treats.
to see you and all your lovely colleagues, so many accomplished women. It's amazing.
Zuzi, as we wrap up, would you be so kind and summarized why you love working in ELT? I always ask people why they love working in ELT, and have you actually ever considered doing anything else? Because you've been doing it for 26 years.
I have considered doing something else actually recently. As I was leaving my company for personal reasons, I was, briefly considering going corporate or actually going to the other side. I haven't even spoken to people about it.
Hmm.
But two things. I love language too much to do anything else. I just cannot be an HR specialist or anything else because I can't, I would not be working with the language, and that's something that is a no-go for me. And also, I just love people so much. I love everything that you have spoken about, the versatility of the learners and what they bring. This is such a privilege to be able to work with all these different people, and being able to have a little peep into their life and how they work and what they do. It's absolutely exciting. So at this point, at this age, I don't think I would like to do anything else. If I ever do something else, it will be something related.
I don't think there is a job like ours out there. The
Mm. Yeah.
combination. I mean, like, yes, therapists talk to people, and life coaches talk to people, and consultants talk to people, and they get the peek into their lives. But we have this whole level of another identity that our clients can create through speaking another language or other languages, because other some teachers teach more languages, yeah, and that is just something special,
It's
isn't it?
something. Totally. Agreed.
So, Zuzi, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And I hope for many more meetings with you because I admire your work, I admire your expertise, and it's always lovely to talk to you and spend time with you. So, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us here in our club. I'm sure the ladies appreciated seeing another perspective from somebody who is working in the corporate world. I certainly have, and I hope to see you soon in Brno.
Thank you so much for having me, Nina. Hello to everybody out there, and I'm definitely coming. Hopefully, even before Christmas, as we've been speaking. So maybe.
Yes.
Thank you for having me, Nina.
So thank you everybody for watching, even either the live version or the recorded version. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Zuzka is in our club as always for a few days after this. And I wish you all a beautiful evening. Bye, everyone.